Read all about it. Northwest Passage conquered. Amundsen reaches the Pacific. 8 brave sailors conquer the Arctic. The Northwest Passage, the search for which took more than 3 centuries, is the shortest sea route from Europe to Eastern Asia. It leads from the western coast of Greenland through the icebound straits of the Canadian Arctic, the Beaufort Sea and the Arctic Ocean to the gates of the Bering Strait. Great sailors and explorers such as John Cabot, Martin Frobisher, John Ross and Henry Hudson tried in vain to find a way through the Arctic, their expeditions always ending in disaster. The biggest and most tragic expedition set off in 1845. 2 ships, Erebus and Terror, commanded by Sir John Franklin, went missing with over 130 of their crew. In 1906, after almost 3 years at sea, for the first time in history, the Northwest Passage was conquered by Roald Amundsen, a Norwegian. Along with his 7 shipmates, on the small cutter Joe, Amundsen reached his goal against the odds and after wintering 3 times. 100 years after this feat, we are setting out from Greenland, and following the route taken by Amundsen, we aim to rediscover the Arctic and find the legendary Northwest Passage. Glacier on Disco Island, western coast of Greenland. This is the only place where, during the summer season, it is possible to take a ride on a traditional Inuit sleigh pulled by a sled dog team. Amundsen, after sailing through the passage, and while wintering on the north coast of Alaska, went on a more than 800-kilometer escapade on a sleigh to telegraph the glad tidings from Fort Eagle City. We also want to get a taste of such a journey. While Dominic was setting off on the sleigh into the glacier, Sławek and Tomek decided to take a slightly different means of transport to get to the foot of the mountain just as fast. It is time now to leave the hospitable coast of Greenland. Before we do that, though, we need to raise a traditional sailor's toast to Neptune. We trust that the grace of the god of the sea will help us and the crew of the Nekton to overcome all the difficulties and dangers of the Northwest Passage. May we have fortune on our side in this Northwest Passage. Most importantly, may we pass through it safely. May we celebrate a happy ending in autumn in Vancouver Bay. Here's to Lancaster Sound, and may it be free from ice. Here's to Bellot, and to Amundsen Bay. The toasts were never ending, but an increasing northern wind and encroaching darkness were urging us to leave. Baffin Bay, lying between Greenland and the Canadian Arctic, greeted us with a steel grey sky and moderate waves. The conditions allowed us to steer the yacht on autopilot, limiting watch duties to controlling the sailing parameters from the warm and comfortable cabin. The other members of the crew could rest easily. Saturday morning brought with it an unexpected and precarious problem. A damaged rudder string prevents us from steering the yacht manually, and magnetic irregularities interfere with the proper functioning of our autopilot. We're going to make for land again. Our yacht, like a wounded animal, is moving unpredictably. To make things worse, on the radar screen, we see a supply ship approaching dangerously. Using the radio, we inform the ship's captain of our predicament. We decide to change course towards the closest inhabited area, where we will be able to repair the damage and fill up our almost empty tanks with fuel. Pond Inlet, Baffin Island, Canadian province of Nunavut. This is the place that we have chosen for our first stop in the Canadian Arctic. At the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Station, we clear customs and start looking for fuel, of which we are slowly running short. Every step of the way we can see contrasts, which, here in the Arctic, are a part of everyday life. On the one hand, there are traditional costumes, but on the other, there is civilization with every creature comfort. The traditional means of transport in summer is a quad, exchanged for a motorized sledge in the long and freezing winter, described by Robert, principal of the local jail.
For 3 months here it's minus 40.
Oh,
It's very, very
yes.
cold, very windy and very cold and very dark.
Yes. And what do you do?
Oh, well, we go to work,
Yeah.
we go home,
Oh,
and we make love.
okay. Oh, great.
That's okay.
Good solution.
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
Robert and his dog Simba were kind enough to take us on a short trip around the neighborhood. On the way, I observed the strange picture that is an Arctic village, so different from stereotypes and our imagination. Meanwhile, Sławek and Dominik are back on the beach, where we left our yacht. They have good news. This evening, a tanker should come and fill up our tanks with fuel. For the time being, despite Sławek's desperate efforts, we cannot start the engine, and we have to get back to the yacht under our own steam. Shortly before dusk, we see the long-awaited tanker. After brief but complicated negotiations and calculations, Jacek and the driver reach an agreement, and very soon our tanks and barrels start to fill with gasoline and oil, necessary fuel, without which our attempt to conquer the Arctic route would be shrouded in doubt. In the meantime, two young Inuit girls appear on the shore and they demonstrate their traditional way of singing.
Throat singing is all about imitating sounds from the environment. You can imitate the wind, the mosquito, the saw. Like, there's a million of things that you imitate, like the walrus, the polar bear.
In the morning, we were surprised to see a Canadian Coast Guard ship lying at anchor close to our yacht. We were worried that because of some formal oversight we would be turned back, like another Polish yacht, Gdynia, several years ago. Luckily, when the officer came on board, these fears were dispelled. Instead, he gave us some very important information concerning ice conditions on the waters that we were going to sail through.
Right here. Oh, okay. Well, you're going to be fine. But I don't think that's moving like to the south there. Okay. Well, smooth sailings.
The prognosis looked promising, but here in the north, the situation can change very quickly, and the ice fields can cut off the way back, or even sink the boat within hours. So as not to waste time, of which we have less and less each day, we weigh anchor and move on into the uninhabited and wild Arctic, trusting nature's grace and our own abilities, and leaving civilization behind for days at a time. Good weather a hunger for exploring the inaccessible Arctic landscape, and undoubtedly something of a reckless spirit, encourage us to get off the yacht for the first time and venture up into the kingdom of the polar bear, landing on Baffin Island. This region is the natural environment of a large population of polar bears, so every white spot on the horizon raises our suspicions. Several days earlier, during air scouting, Canadian soldiers counted over 15 of these beautiful yet dangerous animals in this area, so we take very careful precautions when we land. Keep your eyes open for bears! Sławek and Dominik secure the dinghy, our only way of escape to the yacht. Tomek, armed with a rifle, keeps an eye on the area in order to avoid unexpected danger from inland. We seem to be the only ones on the shore, and the flat open space gives us a false sense of security as we begin our exploration. However, after a few steps, we come across a very ominous surprise. Tell me that it's something else. Dominik, the present skipper, and an expert on Arctic fauna, after a short inspection announces, well, there's no doubt that it's shit. What's more, it's rather fresh. The question is, who or what left it? After a short while, Sławek expresses his opinion on the subject. An animal which eats grass. This is quite an interesting thesis, considering the rocky and waste landscape as far as the eye can see. Close by we find a snare, maybe the remains of a previous expedition, and which, despite the passage of time, is still in working order, as ably demonstrated by Tomek. Full of enthusiasm and forgetting about the danger in which we might be, we move on and find part of an old whale skull. Meanwhile, back on deck, Agnieszka is watching some seagulls at rest, when suddenly something disturbs their peace and quiet. Crew on land, Stare here. A bear is approaching you. I repeat, a bear. In a flash, the whole world around us ceased to exist. Run to the yacht as quickly as possible. The bear didn't give up easily, and very soon the predator, weighing more than 400 kilograms, was swimming close to the side of our yacht. Despite our advantage of having a steel hull, the King of the Arctic was showing us clearly who the landlord was and who was only a guest here. He seemed to be warning us that if we were not careful enough, we might stay in his kingdom forever. A mug of hot tea and a piece of cake all the way from Poland is the best way to raise our morale, which is being put to the test on a daily basis. Suddenly, Sławek notices a Canadian warship approaching on the horizon. Does this mean trouble, or just a regular check?
Request you spell your owner's name, over.
The owner's name is A-Z-S and the harbor name, so it's S-Z-C-Z-E-I-N.
Oh no, just try spelling Szczecin in English.
We are just a sailing boat, we are sailors without any special cargo, we are just going to cross the Northwest Passage, this is our intention.
Your next port of call and arrival time, over.
We are planning to go to Geohaven and we intend to be there, I think, in 1 week time.
This is Warship Montreal, have a safe journey, out.
Thank you very much.
Fine weather and a fabulous landscape, however, favor sailors here in the north. An absence of problems tends to mean that trouble may rear its head at any moment. Dominik saw that for himself on his watch. Skalma, the engine is dying. Injection? There wouldn't be any power if it was damaged. The only possibility is that we have overheated it and the ignition is starting too fast. The oil pressure is fine. When you overheat a diesel engine, this is exactly what happens. The accuracy of Sławek's diagnosis is soon confirmed by Tomek. There's no cooling liquid. It's empty. There's nothing for it but to turn off the engine and examine it closely. In 3 days, we do as many hours as a car in a month. After a while, we find the next dangerous defect. Tomek notices a loose screw securing the accelerator string, which at some crucial moment might leave us without the drive, in which case we will be an easy target for the ruthless Arctic. Start it, Dominique. And again. Full speed ahead and then full speed back. I think it's okay. Luckily, in the end, it all turned out to be just a few moments of fear, and after a short break, we can move on. Nevertheless, the landscape, which before was so beautiful, now seems somewhat ominous. Fort Ross, eastern gate of the Bellot Strait. Time here has stopped, and history seems to be within arm's reach. Abandoned in 1947, the Hudson's Bay Company base is an oasis in the middle of the Arctic desert. Here are intertwined the paths and destinies of those brave people who were attempting to conquer the gateway to the Arctic and to leave behind a reminder of their presence here. We very much wanted to stay here longer, but time is merciless and it pushes us further west, straight into the infamous Bellot Strait. Some 18 miles long and half a mile wide, it is the narrowest link between the waters of the Atlantic and the Pacific, causing very strong and dangerous currents, way in excess of the maneuvering abilities of our yacht. Carried like a bottle thrown into a river, we have to be very careful to avoid underwater rocks and shallows. When the danger has passed, there is a short while to relax. A penny for luck. May we often return here, and may fortune favor us. To us then. Leaving the Bellot Strait behind, we are aware that there is only a way forward from now on, and there will be no turning back. The Arctic is not only a severe and beautiful land, but also a handful of indigenous inhabitants living in small villages sprinkled over a huge territory. After more than a week at sea, we arrive in Joe Haven, a place where, a century before, Amundsen's expedition twice wintered. Will we be able to find any trace of him? Does anyone still remember him? After doing a little light reconnaissance, I come across a rehearsal of the worst church band I have ever heard. Their music was so joyful, however, that I decided to join them. Who knows, maybe if I could stay here longer, I might become the leader of a new band called White Cold Arctic Trappers. Meanwhile, close to the shore, I meet a couple of Inuit cutting caribou meat and preparing their meat and fish supplies for the winter. They are probably some of the last people living here who cut, dry and preserve game using traditional implements and methods. My sincerest admiration was reserved for the oldest inhabitant of Joe Haven, who wants to teach us how to make fire in the time-honored fashion using flint and dried moss. It seems that civilized man has lost the basic skill of making fire. As usual, the one exception is Tomek. Just before setting sail again, by our yacht, we meet the most mysterious person on the whole journey.
We have from Tadeusz that you are some relative of Amundsen.
Yeah, he's my great-grandfather.
Oh God,
Yeah.
that's a story.
Yeah.
How is it? How is?
It's okay. Like, I mean, like, first time I didn't know anything about it. As soon as I found out, I said, "Oh, he's my great-grandfather."
Really?
And then
Incredible.
my mother, she had a picture of him. I said, "Who's that?" And they said, "That's your great-grandfather." I said, "Oh, no." I looked at it and I closely looked at it, very close, and I said, "He's a white man." And that's your grandfather. Great-grandfather.
That's incredible.
And I said, "Oh, gee, I didn't know I was related to Amundsen."
Amundsen's great-grandson turned out to be also an artist, and he showed us his drawings.
That's the drawing that I do. I use pencil first, and then I go over it with the ink.
Yeah.
Anything to do with a polar bear, I would put a crown as the king of the Arctic. It's called a una and a pana. Snow knife and a spear for seal hunting.
For seal.
Yeah. This would be the breeding hole of the seal. And when the seal starts to come up, the rocks start coming up at the same time as the spear.
I'm not fully convinced that our artist's story is true, or if he just wanted to sell us his works. One thing is sure, Joe Haven is one of the last places in the Arctic where the memory of Roald Amundsen and his achievements lives on. Cambridge Bay, Victoria Island. Our great dream may finally come true. After a long journey, we get to the sunken wreck of the Maud. The vessel was built by Amundsen 10 years after crossing the Northwest Passage. The Norwegian explorer sailed on it through the Northeast Passage and thus became the first man to circumnavigate the Earth on the Arctic waters. Unfortunately, in 1925, due to financial problems, Amundsen had to sell the ship to the Hudson's Bay Company. In the 1930s, the ship was anchored at the present spot, where it rusted and sank. Under the water, we witness an incredible view. Tilted to the left, a long hull, over 36 meters long and densely covered in sea flora, seems to guard its history and its mystery. It's some time before we notice different parts spread on the bottom of the sea. Rotting pieces of the superstructure and deck are lying around, and broken parts of the masts are hanging loosely along the sides. Underwater residents, which accompany our journey, make this place even more fantastic and mysterious. Close to the surface, at the front of the ship, we find a beautiful and huge windlass. It looks stunning, and we can imagine Amundsen himself giving the order, "Weigh anchor, full speed ahead." We need to move on as well. See you, Roald. Keep your fingers crossed. Beaufort Sea, northern coast of Alaska. The most recent satellite ice map confirms our fears that we will soon be confronted by huge ice fields. Yellow and red indicate thick ice several years old, and the radar echo is strewn with red spots, leaving us in no doubt. Jacek, through his binoculars, notices the first ice floes. They are not too dense yet. However, this is only a foretaste of the maze of ice in which we will soon find ourselves, and who knows if we will find a way out. Minute by minute, the situation deteriorates more and more. The yacht has to weave its way between larger and denser pack ice, and the steersman has to be very careful not to hit the invisible underwater ice spurs, which may sometimes even reach several meters beyond the sphere of the floes. To make things even worse, thick fog, the inseparable companion of ice, appears and limits our ability to see and navigate. We hope that the secret weapon installed on the mast will enable us to maneuver through this white maze. After a while, there is no one left on deck, and the yacht, seemingly by itself, speeds on its way, steering well clear of all the obstacles. Below deck, all is revealed. It's Sławek who, by carefully observing on the screen the view from the camera attached to the mast, is guiding the yacht safely and surely by means of the autopilot. Night falls quickly, and the enormous density of the ice field leaves us with no choice but to drop anchor and stay in a safe place until daylight. On the map, we find a small island called Cross Island, only a few hundred meters square, and decide to make for it. Not expecting to find anyone there, we are surprised to see lights. Who on earth lives in the middle of the Beaufort Sea?
Hi, welcome, Tommy. One whale is plenty, but we try to get 4. We caught one whale last year, and everybody ran out of whale meat before the winter was over.
These were real Eskimo whalers, fighting for their identity and tradition in an unequal struggle with civilization.
This is the darting gun, and this is the bomb. These are whale bombs. We make these by hand. We make them ourselves. Put black powder in here, and then this is the propellant. You put it on the end of here, and then you stick it in the barrel. It sticks out. This goes in the whale. Then you screw it onto the darting gun, and you strike the whale, and this hits. It shoots the bomb into the whale, and this comes out, and it blows up in 5 seconds. Inside the whale. Inside the whale.
has a quota based upon the population of the village. Like October gets three strikes. Nuksik gets 4 strikes. So it's based upon the population of the coastal villages, and that's how they divide the quotas that they receive from the International Whaling Commission.
The Eskimo people hunt whales only for their own needs and never sell meat. They divide it evenly and give it out to all of the villagers. When hunting, they form teams whose captains are the most experienced hunters.
Finish. Captain's flag.
Okay. Is the colors they are standard or no?
Anybody got different colors. Depends on the captain's wife how he wants to make it.
Before we leave, Captain Isak shares his supplies with us. He knows just how important fresh food and human kindness are. For this, we are very grateful.
Ice free, but all this ice is right around this area. Most of it is.
Finally, Ruth shows us the most recent ice map, which tells us that we have only 30 or so miles of ice left ahead before we get to the Chukcha Sea and then finally head southwards.
5, 10.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 35 minut. Ice free jest odtąd tu. Tak? Już jest? Tak.
Before with all that modern stuff, we get the sun and the wind. Watch the wind all the time, which way it go, and the clouds. And
you see what the clouds are doing? They're 2 layers. One might go this way, one might go that way.
Just follow the daylights, the sun, and which way.
Unfortunately, those days are gone, and now the Eskimo have modern equipment and mobile phones. Fortunately, they remain conscious of their own identity and retain the desire to preserve their skills and traditions, thanks to which they can survive in these extreme conditions, reliant only on themselves and the harsh Arctic environment. Alaska, Chukchi Sea. Increasing wind forces us to seek shelter close to land. Unfortunately, the sandy bottom is not firm enough for us to drop anchor, and because of the shallows, there is a danger of running aground. It's blowing 37 knots already. It's almost a gale. If it breaks the anchor line, we'll have to get out of here, and there can't be any mess on deck. We've got to be ready to go. We're hidden from the wind here, so just imagine what's happening on the sea. There's silence. Arctic silence. Check on the GPS how far we have drifted. They must have broken loose. We can see that you've broken loose. We're also dragging our anchor, but it's a little bit quieter than where you are. We are lowering our sails. We are definitely in the shallows and there's nothing we can do. I wouldn't advise coming any closer. If both yachts get stuck, then we're in real trouble. Screw it. Nekton is in the shallows. Three people could get to them in a small dinghy with a big engine to check out the situation and see what we can do to help. They're the ones who can best help themselves, no doubt about that. Dominique, imagine your boat is in the shallows. You're in deep trouble. You're struggling. People are all over the place on deck. Every wave is enough to do you in. Try getting your head round that. Fuck, this is the most fucking awful thing that's happened on the whole trip. Going there in a dinghy with a small engine is risking your life. Risking your life. Can you check out the tides here? We've started moving a little, and we are trying to slowly get out of the shallows using the engine. The water level can rise a maximum of about 20 centimeters. Something's budged. Each wave is lifting us up and shifting us a little. Yes, we can see that on the radar. Are they free? Yes. Nekton, make your way towards us. When they get here, we can follow our route using GPS. Diomede Island, Bering Strait. We have just crossed the symbolic gate at the end of the Northwest Passage. For each of us, it means something different. What can Jacek be thinking about? We'll get married too and form a threesome. Jacek already seems to have forgotten about those long-legged things. Shall I marry you two right now, or can you wait a bit? Did you say yes? Brave girl. How many times in his life does a guy get to propose? 3? 4? After 101 days at sea and over 6,000 miles from the coast of Greenland through the Canadian Arctic, Alaska, the Beaufort Sea, Chukchi Sea, Bering Strait and the Pacific, we finally reach our goal, Vancouver, Canada.
Marsz Dąbrowski, z ziemi włoskiej do Polski, za twoim przewodem złączył się z narodem.
On behalf of the Republic of Poland, as Consul General in Vancouver, I would like to congratulate you and thank you that by your achievement you have made Polish sailing famous around the world. Thank you. Vancouver welcomes the heroes of a great journey. Congratulations on conquering the Northwest Passage under the Polish flag. We are proud of you.
No to szczęść Boże. Bardzo miło. Fajną robotę. Pięknie wyglądacie. Dobrą robotę.
We have managed to emulate Amundsen's achievement in record time, becoming the youngest crew in the world to conquer the Northwest Passage. We would not have achieved it without dreams, passion, determination, luck, help, and the goodwill of others.
Próbuj chociaż raz nordwestowe przejście zdobyć. Znajdź miejsca, gdzie zimował Franklin u Beauforta wrót. Wykuj własny szlak przez kraj dziki i surowy. Przejdź drogą północ-zachód poza lód.
Brnę przez kry na zachód od Davisa zimnych wrót. Szlakiem tych, których bogactwa wiodły na daleki wschód. Sławę zdobyć chcieli, został po nich tylko proch. Białe kości popłynęły gdzieś na dno.
Spróbuj chociaż raz nordwestowe przejście zdobyć. Znajdź miejsca, gdzie zimował Franklin u Beauforta wrót. Wykuj własny szlak przez kraj dziki i surowy. Przejdź drogą północ-zachód poza lód.